Amelia sat by the small oak table in her kitchen, her hands clasped around a chipped mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her eyes, once bright with hope, now stared into the abyss of uncertainty. Across the table lay a letter no. Not a letter, but a hastily scribbled note left by her husband, Daniel. "I can't do this anymore. I need to find myself. Don't wait for me." The words pierced her chest like shards of glass. She had read them 100 times that day, but each time the ache grew sharper, not duller. The love of her life, the man she had married with dreams of building a family, a future, a home, had simply walked away. No conversation, no explanation beyond vague selfishness. He had left behind a wife and their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, as though they were disposable. Amelia's world collapsed that night. But what Daniel could never have imagined was that his leaving, though it shattered her heart, would awaken a fire inside her, a fire that would carry her from brokenness to greatness, from despair to empire. The days following his departure blurred into one another, bills piled on the counter. The fridge hummed emptily. Lily's innocent eyes kept asking questions Amelia didn't know how to answer. "Mummy, when's Daddy coming home?" The words tore her apart. She swallowed her pain, forcing a smile. "He's gone on a long trip, sweetheart. But I'm here and I'll always be here." At night, Amelia wept silently, muffling her cries into her pillow so Lily wouldn't hear. Yet by dawn, she wiped her tears, braided her daughter's hair, and walked her to school as though the world wasn't crumbling inside her chest. Amelia had never been a woman of wealth. She had worked part-time at a local bakery while Daniel earned a modest salary at an auto shop. Together they barely scraped by, but there had been dreams of saving for a little house with a garden, of holidays by the sea, of a future stitched with love. Now there was only survival. She considered calling Daniel, begging him to return, but each time she picked up the phone, she remembered the emptiness in his eyes in the months before he left. He had already been gone long before he walked out the door, and so Amelia resolved to stop waiting. The turning point came one evening when Amelia sat at her kitchen table, staring at a pile of unpaid bills. She had exactly £23 left in her bank account. She could either pay for electricity or groceries, but not both. Her body trembled with the weight of despair. Lily, sensing her mother's unease, brought over a drawing she had made at school. "It's us, Mummy," she said proudly, holding up the picture. "See, you're smiling, and I'm smiling too." Amelia's lips quivered as she pulled her daughter into her arms. In that innocent drawing, she saw something more powerful than bills or abandonment. She saw the reason she would not give up. That night, Amelia stayed awake, thinking. She thought of her skills. She was good with baking, good with people, and though she had little, she had grit. Perhaps, she thought, she could sell cakes or bread from her tiny kitchen. It sounded ridiculous. Who would buy from her? Yet the idea lingered like a whisper of hope. The next morning, she baked 6 loaves of bread using the last of her flour. She wrapped them in plain brown paper and carried them in an old basket to the local market. Standing there with trembling hands, she felt exposed, small, foolish. But by noon, every loaf was gone. She returned home with £15 in her pocket, small, but more than she had yesterday, and so it began. Days turned into weeks, and Amelia poured herself into baking. At first, she used her grandmother's recipes: hearty bread, honey cakes, and scones that melted on the tongue. Neighbors began to notice. Orders trickled in. Soon she was waking at 4 in the morning to bake before taking Lily to school, her kitchen filled with the scent of rising dough. But with growth came struggle. Herman broke down one morning, leaving her in tears on the floor. She had to borrow money from a reluctant neighbor to repair it. Other times she faced cruel whispers. "She's just a woman trying to play business," some muttered. The weight of single motherhood bore heavily on her shoulders. Yet each time she thought of quitting, she saw Lily's eyes full of trust, full of belief, and Amelia pressed on. The market stall grew. She began delivering to small cafes. Her reputation spread by word of mouth. Amelia worked harder than she ever had in her life. There were nights she fell asleep on the kitchen floor, covered in flour, too exhausted to climb into bed. But with each loaf sold, she was not only feeding her daughter, she was feeding her own hope. 1 year after Daniel left, Amelia had transformed her kitchen into a bustling hub of creation. Her stall was now one of the busiest at the market. She had saved enough to rent a tiny shop front, which she named Lily's Loaves in honor of the daughter who had kept her going. The opening day of the shop was simple, no balloons, no grand banners, just shelves lined with bread and cakes, and Amelia standing nervously behind the counter. She wore a plain apron, her hands trembling as the first customer walked in. But by closing time, everything was sold out. That night, as she locked the door and stood outside her little bakery, Amelia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not in spite of her struggle, but because of it. For the first time since Daniel left, she realized she didn't need him. She never did. But the story didn't end there. Success brought new challenges. Larger bakeries, threatened by her growing popularity, began undercutting her prices. Suppliers raised costs, doubting her ability to pay on time. Worst of all, Daniel returned one evening unannounced, standing at the bakery door with a charming smile and empty promises. Amelia froze at the sight of him. The man who had broken her heart, now drawn back not by love, but by the scent of success. "Amelia," he said smoothly, "you've done well for yourself. Maybe we could try again." Her chest tightened, memories flooding her of nights she cried alone, of the cold note he left, of the little girl asking when her daddy would come home. But Amelia was not the same woman he had abandoned. She was stronger now, forged in fire, molded by struggle. She looked him in the eye and said, "So, Daniel, you left me broken, but I built something out of those pieces. Not for you, but for us, me and Lily. We don't need you anymore." Daniel's smile faded. He muttered excuses, but Amelia closed the door. For the first time, she chose herself. The empire began then, not in riches, not in grandeur, but in a woman's choice to rise. Amelia expanded her bakery, hiring other single mothers who needed work. She taught them, lifted them, gave them dignity. Lily's Loaves became more than a bakery. It became a symbol of resilience, a community hub, a place where broken women came to rise again. The bakery door clicked shut behind Daniel, and Amelia leaned against it, her heart pounding. She hadn't realized until that moment how much strength she had gained. Months of waking before dawn, nights of exhaustion, years of swallowing her tears, they had hardened her resolve like steel. Once, she might have begged him to stay. Now she pitied him. He had walked away from gold, and she had turned the ashes he left into something priceless. But life, Amelia knew, was never a smooth climb. Success was fickle, and challenges wore many faces. The following months tested her like never before. With the bakery gaining popularity, competition grew fierce. A large, established chain bakery opened just 2 streets away, plastering posters with a fresh bread at half the price. Their neon signs glared down at her modest storefront, mocking her hand-painted wooden board. Customers wavered, sales dipped. The fear of losing everything clawed at her. One evening, as she sat with the accounts book, Lily watched her silently. The numbers on the page blurred with tears Amelia refused to shed in front of her daughter. "Hey, Mummy," Lily said softly, "why are you sad?" "Don't be sad. You always make people smile with your cakes." Those simple words broke something inside Amelia, not in despair, but in determination. "If I make people smile, then I will not stop. I will not bow to them." The very next morning, she made a decision. Instead of lowering prices or competing with the chain on their terms, she would do what they could never do. Pour her soul into every loaf, every scone, every tart. She redesigned the shop, painting the walls a warm cream, adding little vases of fresh flowers on the tables. She taught herself new recipes: rustic sourdoughs, cinnamon rolls, seeded bread with a crunch. She began writing handwritten notes on each bag. "I baked with love from our family to yours." Slowly, customers began to return. Not for the lowest prices, but for the warmth, the story, the feeling that each loaf carried a piece of Amelia's heart. Yet the financial strain was real. The cost of rent and ingredients often outweighed her sales. There were nights when she sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, wondering if she was a fool to believe she could make it. But she was never truly alone. Word spread among the women she had hired, mothers abandoned like her, widows, women bruised by life, that Amelia was more than a boss. She was a leader who believed in them. One evening, as Amelia worried about paying salaries, she found a note slipped under her office door. It read, "You gave us a chance when no one else would. We will stand with you no matter what." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her bakery was no longer just a shop, it was a sisterhood. The next turning point came unexpectedly. One rainy morning, a journalist from a local newspaper visited her bakery. He had heard whispers about Lily's Loaves, a bakery that wasn't just selling bread but rebuilding lives. He interviewed Amelia, listened as she spoke nervously at first, then with passion about her journey, her struggles, and her mission to help women stand again. The article ran a week later with the headline, "From Heartbreak to Hope, Single Mother Turns Pain into Power." The response was overwhelming. Customers flocked to the bakery. Orders poured in from neighboring towns. People traveled just to taste the bread that carried a story. Amelia's little shop, once on the brink of closing, became a landmark of resilience, but success came with a shadow. Daniel returned again, not timid this time, but demanding. He stood in the bakery one busy afternoon, his voice low but sharp. "You've built all this without me, but I am still your husband, Amelia. I have rights." Amelia froze, the tray of bread in her hands trembling. "Rights? After leaving her with nothing? After watching her suffer in silence?" "No," she said firmly, her voice steady though her heart raced. "You lost those rights the day you walked away. All of this is mine and Lily's." Customers watched in silence, sensing the storm. Daniel's face twisted with anger, but Amelia didn't flinch. She had faced empty bank accounts, broken ovens, and lonely nights. No man's threat could break her now. He stormed out, muttering curses. Amelia stood tall, her staff gathering around her, her daughter clutching her apron. That day she realized something profound. Her empire wasn't just built of flour and sugar, it was built of courage. Years passed, and Amelia's vision grew. Lily's Loaves expanded into 3 shops, then 5. She opened training programs for women, teaching them not only to bake but also to run businesses, manage money, and reclaim their independence. Her bakery became a movement. Newspapers, then television, told her story. People across the country recognized her as the woman who rose from abandonment to empowerment. But Amelia never let fame cloud her heart. Each morning she still woke before dawn, tying her apron, hands dusted with flour, the smell of fresh bread filling her lungs. For her, success was never about riches or recognition. It was about creating a world where no woman had to beg for survival. One winter evening, as Amelia locked up the bakery, Lily, now a teenager, walked beside her. Snowflakes drifted down, settling on the golden shop sign. "Mummy," Lily said, "did you ever regret that Daddy left?" Amelia paused, staring at glowing windows of her bakery. The question pierced deep, but the answer came softly, firmly. "No, my love. If he hadn't left, I wouldn't have found the strength. We wouldn't have built all this together." Sometimes the people who walk away are really just making space for the person we're meant to become. Lily smiled, slipping her hand into her mother's. The snow that winter never seemed to stop. It layered the rooftops, coated the roads, and weighed down the trees, but Amelia pressed on. Business at Lily's Loaves was thriving. The once tiny bakery had grown into a chain of warm, homely shops scattered across the region. Each store carried her values: freshly baked bread, dignity for workers, and a sense of belonging for every customer who walked through the door. Yet success, Amelia quickly learned, did not remove struggle, it only changed its shape. One spring morning, she received a letter from a corporate law firm representing the very bakery chain that had once tried to undercut her. The letter accused Lily's Loaves of unfair competition and a misrepresentation of products, threatening a lawsuit. Amelia sat in her office, the letter trembling in her hand. Legal terms blurred before her eyes. She had fought battles with poverty, heartbreak, and loneliness. But this was a battlefield of money and power, where one wrong move could destroy everything she had built. For the first time in years, doubt returned. She considered giving up, retreating, selling the business before it was swallowed by sharks. But that evening she walked into the kitchen of her original bakery, the very place where it had all begun. The scent of warm bread wrapped around her like an embrace. She saw the women working there, Margaret, a widow who had lost everything yet now laughed as she kneaded dough. Sophia, once homeless, now saving for her own flat. And Lily, now 14, wiping tables with a proud little smile. Amelia's fear dissolved. I can't quit. Too many people are counting on me. So she fought back. She found a young lawyer, herself a single mother, who took on the case at a fraction of the cost. Together they battled the accusations, proving every claim false. The case dragged for months, sleepless nights filled with worry. But in the end, Amelia won. The victory wasn't just legal. It was symbolic. She had faced giants and refused to bow. The media latched onto the story. Local bakery beats corporate giant, the power of one woman's courage. Suddenly, Amelia wasn't just known in her town. She was known across the country. Invitations flooded in. Interviews, conferences, even offers for partnerships with luxury food brands. But Amelia was careful. She remembered the kitchen table where it had all begun, the hunger that had driven her, the daughter who had drawn pictures of them smiling when they had nothing. She refused to sell her soul for glamour. Instead, she focused on growth that mattered. She launched a program called Arise Again, a training academy for women who had lost their way. She taught not just baking, but resilience, budgeting, communication, and leadership. Hundreds of women walked through those doors broken and afraid. Hundreds walked out standing tall, ready to begin anew. For Amelia, this was the true empire. But with recognition came envy, and envy can be cruel. One of her own managers, a woman Amelia had trusted deeply, began siphoning money from the accounts. It started small, an extra payment here, a missing invoice there. But soon it grew into thousands. When Amelia discovered the betrayal, her heart sank. She had given this woman not just a job, but a second chance, a family. Standing across from her in the office, Amelia asked quietly, "Why?" Tears streamed down the woman's face. "I was drowning in debt. I thought I'd pay it back. I didn't mean to hurt you." Amelia's chest ached with disappointment, but she didn't raise her voice. Instead, she said, "I built this bakery on trust, on lifting people when they're down. You broke that trust, not just with me, but with everyone here. I can forgive you as a person, but as a leader, I must protect the others." The woman left. Amelia wept that night, not for the money lost, but for the reminder that even when you give your heart, not everyone will honor it. Still, she rose the next day, because that was what she had always done. Meanwhile, Lily was growing into a young woman. At 16, she began helping with the academy, teaching children whose mothers were training there. She had inherited her mother's quiet strength, but also a sharp mind and confidence Amelia sometimes wished she herself had at that age. One evening, as they sat together in the bakery's office, Lily asked, "Mummy, do you ever wonder what life would have been like if Dad had stayed?" Amelia looked at her daughter, her heart heavy but clear. "Yes, I wonder. But then I remember, if he had stayed, I might never have discovered what I could do alone. Sometimes life takes away what we think we need, only to give us what we're truly meant for." Lily nodded, her eyes shining. "Then I'm glad, because I don't just have a mum. I have a hero." Those words stayed with Amelia, fueling her more than any prophet or headline ever could. But storms were never far. Daniel reappeared once more, this time not at her bakery, but in court. He filed for a share of her business, claiming he was entitled as her legal husband. Amelia sat through hearings where his lawyers painted him as a man who had simply been lost, a man who inspired her success by leaving as though his absence had been a gift. It was agony to listen. To see the man who had abandoned her now trying to reap what she had sown. But Amelia stood strong. Her lawyer argued fiercely, presenting records of his absence. The years he had given no support to his wife or child, the empire built solely by her hands. In the end, the judge ruled in Amelia's favor. Daniel received nothing. The court recognized what Amelia already knew. Her empire was hers alone. When the gavel struck, Amelia closed her eyes, exhaling years of tension. She had not only won her freedom once again, she had closed the chapter for good. That evening, she walked into her bakery where her staff and friends had gathered to wait for the verdict. When she told them the outcome, the room erupted with cheers. Women hugged her, some crying, some laughing. And in the middle of it all, Lily wrapped her arms around her and whispered, "It's really over now, Mummy. He can't touch us anymore." Amelia smiled through tears. "Yes, my love. Now we can build without shadows." From then on, Lily's Loaves became more than a bakery, more than a business, even more than a movement. It became a symbol. Schools invited Amelia to speak, charities partnered with her academy, and government leaders recognized her as a pioneer in empowering women. But Amelia never forgot her roots. She still rose before dawn, still dusted her hands with flour, still greeted customers with warmth. Because she knew the secret to her empire wasn't in expansion or fame. It was in remembering the girl who once stood in the market with 6 loaves of bread and trembling hands, praying someone would buy. The years rolled forward like the steady rhythm of kneading dough pressed full. Right. Amelia's life became a tapestry woven with hard work, sacrifice, and triumph. By the time she turned 45, Lily's Loaves was no longer just a bakery chain. It was a household name. There were shops in cities she had once only dreamed of visiting. Her academy had trained over 1,000 women, many of whom now ran businesses of their own. Yet for Amelia, the true empire was not measured in numbers or profits. It was measured in stories of women who had walked through her doors broken and left whole. One such story was Sarah's. She had arrived at the academy timid and bruised, escaping years of abuse. She barely spoke above a whisper when Amelia first met her. But within months, Sarah was baking with confidence, laughing with other women, standing taller than she had in years. Eventually, Sarah opened her own cafe, proudly sending Amelia photos of the grand opening. There were dozens more like her. Each success felt like another brick laid in the foundation of a legacy Amelia had never planned, but had built with her very soul. But no empire is without its final test. At the height of her success, it struck in a way Amelia could never have predicted. A fire broke out in one of her largest bakeries, sparked by faulty wiring. Though no one was harmed, the building was destroyed. News of the blaze spread quickly, and rumors began. Was the company overextended? Could Lily's Loaves recover? Amelia stood before the smoldering ruins the next morning, ash clinging to her coat, the smell of smoke heavy in the air. She could hear the whispers of doubt all around her. Some said it was the end, that she had flown too close to the sun. For a fleeting moment, Amelia felt like the young woman she once was, alone, uncertain, trembling with fear of the future. But then Lily appeared by her side. Now a university student, Lily placed a firm hand in her mother's and said, "You've risen from worse than this isn't the end. This is just another beginning." And Amelia believed her. She called an emergency meeting with her staff. Women filled the room, faces anxious but determined. Amelia stood before them not as their boss, but as one of them, someone who had known loss and fear. "But we've faced storms before," she said, her voice steady. "We've fought giants, we've survived betrayal, we've endured fire. And each time we came back stronger. This bakery is not just walls and ovens. It's us, our hands, our hearts, our stories. If we stand together now, not even fire can destroy us." The room erupted with applause. The women rallied. Customers donated, volunteers helped rebuild, and within 6 months, the bakery rose from the ashes, literally bigger and stronger than before. The reopening was more than a business event. It was a celebration of resilience. Newspapers once again wrote headlines, "From ashes to empire. The woman who refuses to fall." Amelia, now older, wiser, and calmer, began to think beyond herself. She had spent years building an empire, but now she wanted to ensure it outlived her. She began setting up a foundation, an organization dedicated to helping single parents across the country gain financial independence. When asked why she was expanding into charity work, she simply said, "Because no one should have to suffer the way I once did. If I can ease one person's journey, then everything I went through was worth it." The years softened, but they also solidified. Lily graduated with honors, walking across the stage with her mother cheering from the front row, tears of pride in her eyes. She later took a leadership role in the foundation, proving she was not just Amelia's daughter, but a force of her own. And Amelia, she finally allowed herself to breathe. To look back, to see the journey not as endless toil, but as a story of triumph written through every scar. One evening, after closing a newly opened bakery in London, Amelia sat with Lily on a quiet bench overlooking the Thames. The city lights shimmered on the water, reflecting like scattered stars. "Mum," Lily said softly, "do you ever think about him anymore? About Dad?" Amelia gazed at the rippling water for a long moment before answering. "Used to, with anger, with sorrow, with questions, but now I think of him only as the man who left, and by leaving set me free. He was the storm that broke me, but he was also the storm that revealed my strength. And for that, strangely enough, I am grateful." Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "You've built more than an empire, Mum. You've built hope, and that's something no one can take away." Amelia smiled, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. For the first time in decades, she felt complete peace. Her story spread far and wide, becoming a source of inspiration for countless others. She was invited to speak at universities, conferences, and even Parliament. Yet no matter where she went, Amelia always began the same way. "I was left with nothing but my daughter and a broken heart. And I built everything from there. If I can, so can you." The lesson of her life was clear. Sometimes the people we think we cannot live without are the very ones holding us back. Sometimes abandonment is not the end, but the beginning. Strength is not found in comfort, but in struggle. And empires are not built by those who never fall, but by those who rise each time they are broken. Amelia's husband left, but she built an empire alone, an empire not of stone or steel, but of courage, compassion, and unshakable will. And as long as bread rose in her ovens, as long as women walked through her doors and left with hope, her legacy would live on.